Hey everybody, what's going on? So I have some pretty awesome news. There's a pretty cool show that just premiered. It's called See. It's on Apple TV Plus, and I actually have a familiar face that I talked to earlier this year, Bree Klauser, the
Again?
visually impaired actress that I talked to back in January. She's actually part of the cast of the show, and I thought it would be nice to bring her back to answer a few questions about the show. So, Bree, can you just let anybody know if they're not familiar with the show, what it's about, and maybe quickly introduce yourself as well?
Sure. And I apologize again for the construction. Los Angeles always something happening. My name is Bree Klauser. I am a visually impaired actor, singer, voiceover artist from New York. I'm coming here from just seeing the show for the first time. It is called See. It is created by Stephen Knight and it is directed by Francis Lawrence, who you may know from The Hunger Games and Red Sparrow. The show takes place 600 years in the future where a virus wipes out most of humanity, and those who are left completely blind. It's in this very post apocalyptic but naturalistic landscape. And we follow these characters who are now living very prehistorically in tribes uh, amongst nature and the remnants of humanity. So the main character we follow is Baba Voss, who is played by Jason Momoa, and who is assisted by his right hand Paris, who is a very wise woman who is played by the legendary Alfre Woodard. And my character, Matal, is part of that tribe as well. She's one of the warriors, but she's just not an ordinary warrior. She is what they call a presage, which is like a empath. She has extrasensory perception of feeling and tension in the air. So in a way, she is a tactician for the tribe's warriors.
So there you go, folks. That is a basically a preview if you're interested in checking it out, Apple TV Plus.
Right.
So regarding the fact that the show deals with characters that are, they've adapted to a basically a sightless life, what do you want for a sighted audience to get out of the show?
I am really excited for a sighted audience to see people who are blind in a way that's never been seen before, where we're not portrayed as the typical tropes of being either helpless or, strong headed and, needing some kind of support and uh, in some kind of victimhood. These people are anything but victims. They are strong, they are literal warriors, like fighting bloody tooth and nail, blind on blind fighting. They're three dimensional in that they have relationships and families, and the story is not about the blindness, which I feel like we so often see, in that the blindness in someone's character is a monolith that can affects everything in their life. And yes, it absolutely affects the way they interact with the world. But you have to remember this is a world without the convention of sight. I think it will be eye opening for a sighted audience to to see this what I really feel is the last frontier in inclusion and disability. I feel like out of all the affected disabled groups in the world, I feel blindness and low vision is kept in the shadows the most. And so often people say that they fear going blind the most. For them to see that that blindness isn't like immobility and death, like I think that's gonna be a real wake up call for the world.
Yeah, it'll be a nice change of perspective.
Yeah.
Now, let me flip that question around though. What do you expect a visually impaired or blind audience to get out of the show?
Well, I hope that it is refreshing to see at least some, the start of some accurate representation. We all know Hollywood is a game of you need a name actor, a legendary actor to lead a show. So
Mhm.
to have an 100% inclusion is the goal, but we have to be honest that we are just at the beginning. And I feel this show is an incredible start. Myself and Marilee Talkington are one of the two recurring characters who are actually low vision. But last night I got to meet a number of other characters who are either guest stars or co-stars. I think in total there is about 9 actors who are blind or visually impaired depicting these characters. Everyone cited or not cited. I feel like everyone depicted these characters very respectfully. I didn't think anyone felt it was like a trope or a gag or saw it as some cool acting challenge, because as you and I know, we know, blindness is not a skill, it is a lived experience. Those seasoned actors who really convincingly committed to the world with not using their eyes and stuff, and I think once you see the show you really see who those people are. But one of the things that my partner said when we watched it was, well, I feel like out of everyone, the people who are actually low vision, those are the ones who really do look blind. You can only teach someone to not use their eyes so much because of the lived experience. And as actors, yes, we like to try everything. And of course, I don't want to only be playing blind characters, especially don't want to be playing a character where their vision is the center of this world, which I'm so glad that and see it's not. I remember we were doing this physical training, and they were doing tricks to help sighted people use their eyes less, and they did this thing with the fingers, and it's a really fantastic movement work that Paradox, Pollock, and Joe Strechay had done on the show. But as someone who is actually low vision, I can't see stereoscopically. So this whole finger test doesn't work for me. And I remember getting a little upset early on, and they said, "No, we brought you here for a reason, for your authenticity. So please bring your experience." And so often the experience that I and the other low vision actors informed everything from the director to the producer's decisions they made, whether it was a choice in potentially ableist language, or to like how a shot would go.
See, you brought up a lot of good stuff. We can't really touch on all of it, but the thing is, we did bring up a lot of this in our previous conversations, so you can check that out too. I'm going to leave a link in the description below.
I feel like this is a good companion piece, because before we talked, it was while I was in the process and dealing with my vision and the sighted actors and the whole learning. But you don't really, so much goes on, so much gets cut and changed and rewritten. When I went to the premiere of we saw it in a big movie theater, and they offered audio description, which as they always should, uh, but I personally chose not to do it, because when I go to see a movie I usually don't, there's not usually audio description, so I wanted to experience it like that. And I think I am going to watch it again with audio description just to see how well it is, and y'all can tell me how it is, give me yays or nays. And I don't really like action movies, because when I see action movies, I feel like I'm always missing something visually. Like my boyfriend hates bringing me to action movie because I just like, but I never felt visually lost, because the soundscape is so rich when it comes to the pacing of the dialogue to the scoring. And in a fight scene where it's moving too fast for someone who is visually impaired for the eye to catch up, the sound makes up for it. It gives you that visceral sense. And I forget
Huh.
not knowing the name of the sound director or whatever, but he did a fabulous job. So I felt really included in that experience.
Oh, okay, so it seems like accessibility was kind of a factor in just the making of the series then.
Absolutely, they put it very paramount. I met with the head of accessibility in January, Sarah, and she was very wonderful, and she over and over again stressed the importance is that we were here and that we had a say. We have the honor and the privilege of representing the whole low vision community, and we have to remember
Right.
how long has it been that we were completely invisible.
Yeah, I mean, this is a nice step in the right direction. So kudos to Apple for doing this. And speaking of body descriptions, all their shows debuting on Apple TV Plus are going to be audio described. So just a little quick tidbit for those of you who want to know. As an actor, how did you treat the role any differently because of the subject matter and also because of the potentially large audience that it's going to show to?
Well, as someone with a theater background, I did learn a lot about the scale of film and the intimacy, and Francis Lawrence is really a master at bringing that out of people. But as far as the difference between Matal and the world that she lives in opposed to my world is I live in a sighted world. So the way she moves through the space is different than I would. And on top of that, she's always using her ability. She's always using that well, a fifth sense since she has no sight. That sixth sense, that
Mm.
presaging, that empath, extra sensing. It's funny as actors sometimes we often end up playing people who are very different from ourselves, and she is very grounded and ethereal and just so connected to her environment and just the the gentlest shift in the wind just shakes her to the core. Well, I'm going around like a freaking horse with blinders, and I'm just like a social butterfly. So but this is what we do as actors. We transform.
That's good insight, though. I mean, so few people get to hear things from an actor's perspective anyway. So any information that you give out is just, it's just pretty, I don't know, priceless I mean, at least from my perspective. But I think so many people get to see just the finished product. They fail to realize how much just work goes into all this.
Oh my God! Every day it was like we were shooting a mini feature, and I don't know if you noticed, Apple spent something like $15 million an episode, which is
Yeah.
unheard of. And I think that says a lot about not just them wanting it to be a commercial success, obviously, because it's a new venture, but as you said, they had a lot of thought about how to make this an inclusive entertainment experience for the low vision and blind community.
Now, I've heard that, and they've mentioned that a lot of consultants were involved, and they got a lot of feedback from consultants, also from the actors like yourself, the low vision actors. So, how critical was it to have all those voices to just make sure as many things were accurate as possible?
Absolutely critical. Joe Strecce was on. There was not a day where Joe Strecce was not on set, consulting every single moment and supervising everything. And when I and Marilee were there, the producer, the showrunner, who unfortunately is moving on to another project, he would listen to everything, and everything was a yes or we're going to try our best. There was no red tape. There was no bars. It was an open forum and an ongoing discussion about accuracy and respectful portrayal and
Mhm.
creating this world. I know people say that to have consultant is not enough, but it is a step. Now, and I think I mentioned this in our last conversation, is that before a consultant is brought in, the first priority of any producer or casting director is to get as much authentic representation. And if
Mhm.
for some reason someone who is sighted is more right for that part than the number of low vision actors, and I know a number of low vision actors, but that's where it needs to start from. You can't just hire a consultant and say, well, we did the work.
Now, the next question is actually about the casting process. I don't know. I mean, from your perspective, was it any different compared to any other casting process where you played a disabled character, or was it kind of, I mean, they're all different from each other, but did it seem a little bit different here?
Well, the fact that it was through self tape, but I'm realizing that more and more. And just for you guys know, self tape is instead of like going to an audition and meeting people and getting filmed, you go to a taping space and you have your sides and you present it, which I actually like better because I feel like I have a lot of control of the situation. I am usually given more time so I can memorize because as a low vision actor, I feel like I have that double duty of needing to memorize really fast, and I often can't use the script to decide to support me. I didn't feel like in my audition, I had to, there was pressure to be like, oh, I have to act blind. There have been so many roles with questionable writing about blindness. Even if you are actually low vision, they'll be like, oh, can you be blinder? And it's the same thing that people with people of different ethnic backgrounds, actors, they're they're told to portray an ethnic stereotype. I know that I lost out on parts because I don't present uh, physically enough as blind, and meaning that is that I'm not perpetuating a stereotype. And with
Right.
this role, I knew it was put out there that, you know, they just wanted to be authentic. So all I had to do was create a character and think about the normal things, the emotional life, their circumstances.
Now that a show like C has premiered, what do you hope to, well, C, no pun intended, for future shows that are going to be talking about disability or just have disability as part of the plot? What do you hope to see from those yet to be released shows or films?
I think continuing the work of C, not making disability this monolith. Yes, it's very intrinsic in the plot that in C, it's a world without sight, and then there's these babies born with sight, so it's like this new thing. Continue to make low vision characters real people with
Hmm.
wants and needs, who have sex, who have fight, who, you know, have this full
Mhm.
emotional life. And I think what we should see is, I think, more people with disabilities in the writing room. I think for people to become executives and producers and writers, the stories that we'll see will become less about trying to approximate what that experience is, and will be an actual depiction of that experience. And then whether it's a low vision actor or a sighted actor, there is still some truth in there. It should really get to a point where it's like, oh, we meet a character and she's in her 20s and she has this going on in her life. Oh, and she just happens to be blind. I don't know, like maybe it's something you would find out like halfway through a series and it's not even like mentioned, where it's not like this freaking elephant in the room all the time. And that goes back to changing, but the media affects people's opinions. It's where we get the majority of our information.
Yeah, and so that this is why something like film and TV is very important, especially for bringing out the message of how disability is to be shown, because a lot of people get the wrong impression through shows and films that have been written by someone who maybe isn't disabled, and they're just, like Bree said, putting out stereotypes.
And yeah, so it's available on Apple TV Plus, which is a new streaming app. It's only $4.95, which here in New York and San Francisco and LA, that's less than a cup of coffee. So
Right.
hey, and I think anyone with a new iPhone actually gets a subscription for a year for free. So if you have that new iPhone,
I've heard it's almost any Apple product, so maybe if you get an Apple Watch or Apple TV like set-top box or
you would
whatever
know
Apple
more
product,
than
I
me.
think they
You're very in tune with the tech world, so.
yeah, so they mentioned something like that, but yeah. So thank you, Bree, for doing the second interview. I mean, it was nice. We weren't sure.
I never had any doubts that we weren't going to do it. And one more thing, one more plug.
Oh,
For
oh,
those who
okay.
are audiobook readers and listeners of audio series, I don't know if you're aware of what Audible is doing right now with these original audio dramas, and they are really trying to reach out to the low vision community with these series because they're just as compelling as real series. And I happen to be cast in the lead role of a new original audio drama that Audible will be releasing in 2020. And maybe we can talk more about that when that comes out.
I'm a fan of Audible, but I did not know about that. So yeah, I guess we will see Bree back here talking about that because now I'm really interested. See, you've left me hanging here, but in a good way. So you
We
know.
shall see. Roll credits. See.
All right, you guys. So hopefully you check out the show, and like I said, Apple TV Plus premiering on November 1st.
Bye.